that's the way to do it. Now, the reason that the forum closes 3 days before the submission is obviously there's got to be an end time to it, after which it just becomes too difficult to keep looking at those responses. I'm going to tell you a bit about how to manage that end date later on, but for now, just make sure you're clear about that forum. Is everybody happy with that one? Cool. What I'm going to do now is go back to the main screen, back again. And you'll see here, of course, you can print the tender notice, but you can also download the tender documents, which will be a zip file. Most of you are familiar with that. I had a few questions about that this morning, but essentially just download it. So let's have a look at what happens when you download it. I'll go to my computer and you'll see that we've got 9 documents which are PHT documents and 2 about the process of putting up information. These are TenderLink documents, so they're not PHT. All these other 9 are. In fact, what PHT will always do is number everything. So all 9 documents need to be looked at. What I want to do is just show you some of those documents, just to give you a bit of an idea. So attachment 1 is for reading, and that's a really important document because it lays out the sort of services they're looking for and so on and why. Attachment 2 is a glossary of terms, good reading. Attachment 3 is one of those crucial documents that you will need to upload in your submission. So let's have a look at that one. In fact, I've already got it open, and that's what it looks like. And this is your response to Section 3 Criteria 1. And these are the various different questions. And so this one talks about the chronic condition that you're applying for funding for. And if you have more than one, you scroll down, there's one for a second one, and you can add a third and whatever. So the point is that this document needs to be populated, and that's a document that is uploaded later on. Attachment 4 is the other one that you need to look at. This is the financial analysis document, and there's a few things I would like to point out with that one. I'll just make that full screen. This is information for you to complete. So the key thing I'm going to tell you later is don't upload your own spreadsheets. You only upload this particular one, right? The thing that I want to point out is that at the bottom you've got a number of worksheets and you need to look at all of them. This one is about your financial proposal and it's got formulas built in. The first one is about financial details of the organisation, and so you've got to give some idea. Obviously, in order to get funding, they need to know how you're going to manage that funding. You'll also see a guide to the section and instructions and some other financial information there. So again, I'm not going to go through everything, that's not the purpose of today, but what I do want to point out is that always look at how many tabs are on the bottom of that spreadsheet and look at all of them. And again, this is a document you will need to upload in the appropriate section later on. The other attachments, you've got some more reading, local government area profiles, there's 2 of them, 2 fact sheets that you can look at. This tender criteria summary document is also a very important one that you need to consider. And this is kind of going into the assessment process, but I think it might as well be relevant to talk about it now. And ask as many questions as you like. What you see here is these are the 8 criteria by which the tenders will be assessed. And they've given you the weightings as well. So 25% weighting is the highest one, which is improved health outcome to be achieved. So you need to be able to demonstrate how you are going to do it. So not only have they given you the weightings, but they've actually given you what they mean. So if you scroll down, you can see that you need to identify these various different bullet points. And I mentioned that in the other workshops, is that when I look at answering this, you need to provide sufficient detail. Obviously, we are all different size suppliers and providers. And one of the difficulties is that I face myself is, as a very small provider, when do you complete tender documents? It's like me in front of the telly at night or on the weekend when everybody else is having fun. Some of those bigger providers might have full-time resources dedicated to doing it, and I don't. So my tendency sometimes, and I've been guilty of this in the past based on feedback, so I've not been successful. I say, why? You know, I'm brilliant, you can do it, I can do it. And they say, well, you haven't given us sufficient detail. And the problem that I've had, because I sit in front of the TV and do it, and I'm tired after a day's work, I go in there and I think, yep, that'll do. Yep, they know what I mean, that's cool. And I upload it. And of course the problem is that they will look at my submission with other submissions. So for a 25% weighting, I've got one paragraph and someone else has got 2 pages. Now I want to point out it's not to do with the length necessarily, it's the quality of your submission, of course. But the point is that I need to provide sufficient information for them to make a good assessment. And that's the problem you have. So my choice as a small provider is, will I put a tender for this in or not? And if I am going to do it, I have to do a good job. Regardless of the size of my organisation, because in the assessment it makes not much difference, right? We're all on an equal footing, and that's the thing. Some people said, oh, isn't that a bit unfair? Yeah, look, it probably is, but that's the way it goes, you know? So it's a bit unfortunate. And I'm going to give you a bit more of a hint later on in terms of, well, how do I actually tell you that story in there? Okay, so I'm going to give you a bit of an idea. Actually, I'll give it to you now while we're here. Has anybody ever applied for a government job in the past? I know some of you have. Did selection criteria? Yeah, what fun, isn't it? Yeah. Look, I'm not a big fan of selection criteria, but there is one good thing that comes out of it, and that is that you're asked to demonstrate your skill in a certain area. So you use the STAR method, if you remember: situation, task, action, result. So I say, in my previous role, I was given this task to do. What I actually did was blah, 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 and the end result was that I got highly commended. So you see that the STAR process for a job allows me to say not only, oh yeah, I can do it, believe me, but here's some proof. And this is the thing, you need to provide evidence of your ability to meet these various criteria. And of course that's judged. What I can tell you too, that what Primary Health does is they look at your submission and they will score you from 0 to 10 for each of those criteria. So if you've done one paragraph, you might get 2 out of 10. Someone else may get 8 out of 10. So you can start to see there the difference that's there. So like you would do for a job, if you're keen to really get the job, you of course, have I given them sufficient information in order to be asked for an interview, right? So that's a job, a bit different, but the same logic here is that you need to pay close attention to what they're asking for. Have I provided sufficient information? And I will point out later on, it's not about providing irrelevant information or information that doesn't add to that thing, of course, but you need to make sure it's sufficient for that. Any questions about the criteria? Yes? Okay, so the question is, you're not 100% sure whether to submit a tender, but should you stay in the game and therefore let them know that you're still interested in that particular area, or just not bother submitting one at all? Really, I guess that you're the only one who can really make that decision. To me, I don't put a tender in unless I'm serious about the tender, because they're going to assess it. And if you're not serious about the tender, I don't think there's really a lot of point. Would you agree, Julia?
I would agree, and just adding to that, I'd probably just maybe put an email together and just send it through, just saying the reasons why you're not submitting and that you are interested, but because of these things we're not submitting on this occasion. Yeah.
The other thing is, and the other thing is that I was going to talk about later, but if there's a particular area that you think we're not really there yet, It doesn't stop you from submitting, but you just tell the story. This is